begin this segment in Ghana with plans to stop paying for power that it doesn't consume may cost the country as much as $2 billion in upfront claims. Our private operators will not accept Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Attah's proposal to renegotiate agreements and will demand the full payment of their contract's termination clauses. The group represents 9 members which generate about 1,500 megawatts of the country's installed capacity of 4,889 megawatts. Peak demand is 2,525 megawatts. In July, Ofori-Attah said Ghana is paying about 2.5 billion cedis per year for power that it doesn't need through take-or-pay contracts, which typically compel buyers to compensate service providers, regardless of whether they consume a service or not. In addition, Ghana will pay as much as $850 million from 2020 for excess gas. And West African leaders have pledged $1 billion to combat the spiraling threat of Islamist militancy in the region. Groups with links to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State have strengthened their foothold across the arid Sahel region this year, making large swathes of territory ungovernable and stoking local ethnic violence, especially in Mali and Burkina Faso. The 15 members of the West African bloc and the presidents of Mauritania and Chad had gathered for an extraordinary summit in Burkina Faso's capital, Ouagadougou, to address the growing insecurity. ECOWAS Commission President Jean-Claude Cassi Brou said the Commission had decided to contribute financially and urgently to joint efforts in the fight against terrorism by pledging $1 billion. And last week was packed with events in South Africa, which may cost President Ramaphosa his attendance in the UN General Assembly, which begins on Tuesday, the 17th. Last week, the presidency had announced that South African President Cyril Ramaphosa will skip the United Nations General Assembly this month and instead focus on dealing with rising violence and the country's struggling economy. On Friday, hundreds of protesters staged a sit-in at the entrance to the Johannesburg Stock Exchange to call for an end to gender-based violence in South Africa after crime statistics released on Thursday shows 2,771 women were murdered in South Africa in the 12 months through March. The number of reported rapes rose 3.9% to 41,583 in the period. Well, let's see how all of these will impact the South African economy and possibly shape the week in South Africa. I'm being joined by an economic analyst there in South Africa, Trinity Nkube. Good afternoon, Mr. Nkube. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me again.
Well, President Ramaphosa is not only battling with the economy, the issue of violence, particularly gender-based violence and xenophobic attacks, seem to have taken center stage. How much dent do you think these will do to the struggling economy?
It was very worrying, but at the moment, those trends have not really translated into the macroeconomic, variables. However, over the long term, I'm very concerned because a lot of people that would like to come to South Africa would like to see a peaceful South Africa, a crime with less crime, with less violence on women. Women contribute a lot to our economy. In fact, a lot of studies across the World Bank and the IMF suggest that the more you empower women, we have had African examples in which when the more empowered women are, the safer women are, the better the society. So I'm very concerned from a long-term perspective. But at the moment, the right seem to be doing well. However, the politics shape the economics. We need an African politics that is stable, that is friendly to every African national, so that people can work together.
All right. Now, credit ratings firm Moody's last week trimmed its economic growth forecast for South Africa to about 0.7% in 2019 from a June forecast of 1%. Now, do you also see these violence attacks affecting the country's sovereign ratings eventually?
Looking at the variables that the ratings agents are looking at, they seem not to take the violence, too seriously. It is a serious matter. We do not want to relegate it as a non-serious matter. It is a serious matter, but they are looking at specific reforms that they've been targeting. So in that sense, we could still see a situation where South Africa gets away without a downgrade, per se, based on the risk analysis that they've done, based on the performance of the rand and some of the reforms, and they're giving the government a little bit of a lifeline to say, let's see what happens in the next few months.
All right. So do you think Ramaphosa's economic reforms are rather slow?
I would agree with you. See, this violence that we talk about and the social unrest, these are all signs of people being unhappy. Unfortunately, the South Africans, they are pointing to, they are voicing their concerns to the wrong constituency. There are bigger issues at play when it comes to the socioeconomic status of the people. There are bigger issues around the reforms. They have not been dealt with, decisively. Hence, yes, they are slow. People want to see decisiveness. They want to see everybody being able to produce economically and consume. Hence, yes, they are very slow. We wish that there could be some decisiveness, in terms of these reforms.
All right, it's a new week. What are your outlook and expectations?
Firstly, we would like to see a peaceful country, South Africa. I understand there's an envoy that has gone to some of the African countries to apologize for what has happened in South Africa. It's very not so pan-African in a way. That is obviously a very important matter. Going forth, we would want to start working on the fundamental issues so that we do not have a repeat of all these socio-economic unrest, people, crime, and all of these. These are manifestation of unhappiness or socio-economic imbalances. So I see us working towards, first of all, dodging the what you call the downgrade. That's what I look at, and then from then we can start to build again.
All right, thank you for your time, Mr. Trinity Nkube.
Thank you very much.
In the meantime, a plan to establish the world's largest green energy financing initiative is being thrashed out in South Africa, which needs to reduce its environmental footprint and find innovative ways to fund debt-stricken state power utility Eskom holdings. The plan being formulated by Meridian Economics, a Cape Town-based think tank, is under consideration by the government. It envisions the establishment of an $11 billion facility backed by development finance institutions and private funders. The new entity would lend money to Eskom at slightly below commercial rates on condition it accelerates the closure of polluting coal plants to make way for renewable energy. South Africa is the world's 14th largest producer of greenhouse gases, and the government is under pressure to deliver on a commitment it made in 2009 to reduce emissions by 42% by 2025. And for an update from the Nigerian stock market, here is Temple Ashaju. Hello, Temple. Good afternoon. So, where is the index at the moment?
Well, it's up actually, up some 0.71%. That's what we see this Monday, and it looks like we're in for a good start this week as we see the bullish sentiment that we saw on Friday now, kicking off the new week today. We've seen a whole lot of interest in the banking names and the consumer goods side of the market. We've seen these bullish sentiments cutting across all the major sectors. Last week, we had seen a positive reaction to the decision of the election tribunal, throwing out the opposition's petition against President Muhammadu Buhari. That seemed to be the major stats for the bulls, in the market. And that, as we speak, has also continued to push up the indices of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With that, it looks like we're in for better days again, because again, if you look at the 30-day average that we regularly do by way of turnover in the market, that's what we have, about 3 billion naira right now worth of transactions. We've seen interest across all the major stocks. The NSE 30 is doing so well as we speak. And I think coupled with the fact that we saw the Saudi Arabia fire affecting its the Aramco oil facilities, that seemed to be a plus again for the oil price, of course, which has pushed up the price of Brent crude now to some $71 per barrel. That seems to also be having a positive impact on some of the exploration oil companies that we have listed in the market, the largest of them being Seplat. And of course, the share price of Seplat is still at 460 naira as we speak, but we've seen investors brazen up to take advantage of this whole issue that we're seeing in Saudi Arabia, because again, we understand that eventually it will have a positive effect on the macroeconomy, given the kind of advantage it will give to foreign exchange for the country, and of course the fact that we'll be able to have more patronage on Nigeria's crude oil. This is also coming at a time when the NNPC is looking to borrow some $2.5 billion from a Chinese firm now to invest in pipeline for gas. So all this you put together, foreign investors and domestic investors are seeing it as a good one for the country, and that will certainly have a positive impact on the capital market. Chimeze.
All right, Temple, it's a new week. Let's keep the optimism flying. Thank you. Well, it's on that note that we wrap up today's edition of the program. Thank you for watching. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwagu.